Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Glendale Redevelopment Agency meeting of March 20th, 2007. May we have a roll call, please?
Agency members Manukian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yusefian.
Here, may we have your report, please?
The agenda for the March 20, 2007 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, March 15, 2007 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. What's next, please?
Approval of minutes.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded. The roll call, please.
Roll call.
Yeah. Motion and
Agency
second.
members Manukian.
Yes.
Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian.
Aye. Next, please.
Item 5 are oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the agency may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for investigation and report.
Okay, I have no oral communication cards. No one's running over. The oral communication is closed. What's next, please?
Item 6A, Director of Development Services regarding status report of the agency's prior approval of a parking exception for property located at 240 North Brand Boulevard, Glendale Career College, for information only.
I'll go to Mr. Starbird.
And I'll go to Phil Lyons, Famed Director for the staff report. Phil?
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, on February 13th, you granted a parking exception for Glendale Career College to occupy space at 240 North Brand. There were some conditions attached to that it would be a 3-year lease, and then the college would move on to another location. Part of the condition was that there be a bond posted or security deposit posted, and that there be a covenant that the property owner at 240 was also the property owner at Doran and San Fernando, that they work together to build a new building on San Fernando that the college could locate to. Another condition was that there be a non-binding letter of intent that go along with that 3-year lease to work to the project for the project on San Fernando Road. To date, approximately a month, nothing has happened on the existing building. No permits have been pulled to finish the tenant improvements so the college could move in. We contacted both parties. Doran Platt's representatives told me that they had sent some new documents out to the college, one of which was they used the term binding letter of intent for the site on San Fernando and Doran, and also that there were some lease provisions that had been revised and that the two parties were negotiating those. When I contacted the college, they said yes, indeed, they had not completed their negotiation. They were still discussing the terms of their occupancy both at 240 and out on San Fernando Road. That is the extent of our status report. This was something that the agency wanted to see move quickly. That's why the 3, at least as staff interpreted, why the 3 years were put on. It was every indication when you approved this that work would start immediately and the college could move as quickly as possible. Given the fact that there has been no progress, what staff would recommend to you is that we continue to monitor the situation, stay in touch with the parties, but after 60 days, if there is no real movement, that we present for your consideration a motion to rescind your prior parking exception. As staff just doesn't think that it should sit out there forever without any kind of end date. So that is our report. We're here, staff is here to answer your questions. Representatives of the college are here and to answer any of your questions.
Hey.
Mr. Quintero.
It's a private parcel of land with a private landowner, et cetera. What is it that makes you itchy about having it sit there forever?
It's that you granted a parking exception that doesn't have a date upon which it has to be executed or taken advantage of. The municipal code...
But the parking structure is empty also.
Parking structure is empty. The municipal code has a provision that it's 2 years, it needs to be acted on in 2 years. That does not apply to the redevelopment agency's parking exception unless you include it in the motion. It wasn't included in the motion because both parties said we're moving as quickly as we can to get this thing done, and now it's just stopped. So for us, we don't think it's a good idea to just have a parking exception hanging out there for any period of time.
Well, I personally don't see exactly what the problem is. I'm sure they're trying to come to terms. They've worked on it long enough. It's been years. We're the ones that were the roadblock, meaning the city of Glendale. So as far as I'm concerned, when they come to an agreement, that's fine with me.
Well, in terms of us being the roadblock, I remember granting them a 100-space exception, and they turned it down. So let's not lay blame everywhere here. I don't like a parking exception hanging out there for years and years, and not knowing really where we're going with this. I'd like to hear from. I know there are representatives. I'd like to hear their opinion and give us a brief explanation as to where they are. Hopefully, they're resolving their issues and moving forward. I mean, we all want them to succeed in this endeavor.
Okay. Let me go to the speakers. Sheldon Baker. Your name for a record, please.
Sheldon Baker, 100 West Broadway. I represent the Career College. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. Actually, we're very embarrassed to be here, quite candidly. We at the college, my clients in the East Coast and here, thought that all matters were resolved. When you took action in the previous meeting on the 13th of the month, in February, we had been promised that the building permit would be pulled before that meeting. After the meeting, we were assured the building permit would promptly be pulled. We're still waiting. The college has deep concern, the same as you folks do, about the passage of time, because they need to get into that site, and they can't do so without the TIs being completed and the certificate of occupancy being granted. Right after, actually before and after the last meeting on the 13th, we provided you with a sign, or your staff with a signed copy of the non-binding letter of intent, even though it wasn't required until the certificate of occupancy was ready to be issued. About 10 days ago, a surprise occurred when Dornplatz submitted to our clients a binding letter of intent. The word binding in this situation can cause some very significant issues. I remind you that this is and it has to do with the parcel of property on San Fernando Road, an undeveloped site, raw dirt. Plans have not, to our knowledge, been prepared. Difficult to write a lease until you can see what kind of parking can get in there and how the site plan all works out. I don't believe anything's been filed with the city for development on that site, so becoming a binding letter of intent can cause some real concerns. Nevertheless, our client is diligently working to try to solve the issues that Dornplatz has raised in the binding letter of intent. They're working in earnest. I talked again to the East Coast. The people here are not involved in those negotiations. That's the East Coast and Dornplatz. But I talked to Mr. Sykes, who you've all met. He this morning assured me that they are working diligently to try to solve the issues. Our client has no problem with you asking for a report back within 60 days with a little bit of cooperation from Dornplatz. Our client is very confident that that 60 days should result in fruition and a win for everybody. But it takes cooperation. The negotiations are a private matter between Dornplatz and Landmark, who owns the Glendale Career College. Those negotiations are going on probably as I'm speaking to you now. We hope we can solve the new issues that have developed. that would be a blessing for everybody. But time will tell. So we'd be more than pleased to come back and report to you, to your staff, where we are, and hopefully it'll be far less than 60 days. But my client cannot wait forever, same as I know some of you cannot.
Mr. Menuchyan?
Mr. Baker, if we put a time limit in terms of pulling the permits, if we say if no permits are pulled within a certain period of time, you lose the parking exception, would that be an incentive for Dornplatz and the East Coast people to work faster to resolve this issue?
It's not going to be any more of an incentive for my client, I can tell you that, because my client's working. I cannot speak for Dornplatz.
Okay.
And I don't believe their representative is here today, and so you'd have to ask them, Mr. Menuchyan. I'm very sorry, I can't answer it.
As far as your client, it makes no difference?
It depends on what that time period is. When I read the report,
60 days, you said 60 days.
60 days to report back, and that's what the report says, and then to report back so you can take what action thereafter that you want. I didn't think we'd be standing here, Mr. Menuchyan.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Are there any, if I may, Mr. Chair, are there any issues with the city that Dornplatz or the college has in terms of permits, or are we? I don't want to, 60 days later, I don't want to.
Mr. Menuchyan?
I don't want you coming back and saying, "Well, the city delayed it."
I didn't have any issues on the 13th. I have no issues now.
Okay.
But I cannot speak for Dornplatz.
Okay.
I provided Dornplatz with a non-binding letter of intent, and as I indicated to at least your staff, that letter of intent was back in my hands by email within 5 minutes, signed.
Okay.
I have yet to hear a word with regard to the covenant that runs with the property, and that's a Dornplatz issue. I've asked, are there any issues? I've had silence. You'd have to ask your staff if they've heard anything. I don't know.
One more question. Does the college have an alternative site, just in case this doesn't go through? Because
they have they've been looking. Nothing is available. Mr. Menuchyan,
I just feel terrible for for the college.
Oh, we do too. Yeah, and this has caused some significant harm to the college because they don't know where their home is going to be, and that you saw it in the figures of the student body compared to a year ago to today, and it's serious issues. They are looking. Again, the city has been very cooperative, trying to find, from time to time, when asked, are there other alternative sites? And every one of those sites has been looked at. The blessing, if there is one with the Brand Boulevard site, is that they can get in there a much shorter period of time because of the condition of the building and meeting the needs of the college. But even that starts to wane pretty fast from now on. There are others here from the college if you have questions, but it's your call.
Hold on. Yeah. Let me go to Mr. Lansafame, and then I'll
just
come
to
back.
answer the question, the permits are ready to pull for the tenant improvements, and then inspections would happen subsequent to that. There are still some terms that I believe Ms. Van Meiden is waiting for comment back from Dornplatz on some of the documents that need to be executed prior to occupancy.
As long as we're not blamed for the delay 60 days from now,
the permits are ready to pull and have been for some time.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Menuchyan, your staff worked on weekends to have things in condition that the building permit could be issued. And so my clients have absolutely no issues that I'm aware of at all with regard to the college. You've been very, very cooperative.
Regards to the city.
Yeah, from the college to the city, yes.
Senator Charlie.
This is not exactly a agreement between two private parties. The city has gotten involved in it with regard to the parking exception. And what I'm concerned is that, and what you said, Mr. Baker, is that you prepared the non-binding letter of intent, but all of a sudden Dorn Plants wants a binding letter of intent, which would certainly make a further commitment on your client to move into that other spot on Doran and San Fernando. And my concern is that they're using this as some sort of barrel, holding your client over a barrel to extract perhaps more favorable leasing terms or other concessions in that lease. And I hope that's not the case, and you don't have to disclose that if it is, but it was my understanding that we were all pretty much on the same page last time you were before us, and it sounds like the college has done everything that they promised us that they would do with regard to Dorn Platts, and we got involved and extended the parking exceptions, which permitted Dorn Platts to find a tenant not only for their 240 North Brand, but also a prospective tenant for their San Fernando and Doran properties. So I don't want to jump to conclusions or assume any sharp bargaining on the part of Dorn Platts, but I'm not happy. I would really like this to be all nailed down. You guys are over the barrel. We've heard the story about your current location and the excessive rent and overstay, holdover fees that you're paying. And I'm a little disappointed that Dorn Platts is not here today. I assume that they were fully aware of this hearing and would have wanted to give us their side of the story to address it, at least make a representation that they're bargaining in good faith over legitimate issues. But I'm a little bit disheartened not to see them here, and a less reasonable mind may draw conclusions as to their disingenuousness regarding this whole process. Not me, though. Less reasonable minds. You don't have to answer that. That's a rhetorical question, Mr. Baker, but that's the way I'm thinking at the moment.
Let me see if he has any comment.
No,
Okay.
I've been on that side of the table also, and I appreciate your not asking for some responses.
Thank you.
But rest assured, the parties are in discussions, and with some cooperation and reasonableness, that should reach fruition.
Mr. Quintero.
Well, the point I was making was it certainly took the city council long enough to decide that this career college placement in our downtown was a good idea. How long did that take, Mr. Baker, to the best of your knowledge? A year, 9 months?
I wasn't representing the
It
college
started
in the
even
first
before-
go-around.
right,
So
even before
I can
they-
plead innocent.
So that's point number one. Then the second point is this is obviously a very complicated transaction, moving into that existing building and then having to build a brand-new building on San Fernando Road from scratch. So I don't anticipate that this is going to not work. I think it will work, but I think it'll take a while to put it together. And of course, I understand the college's point of view when, in fact, you're being sort of forced to move out of your current location. But the bottom line is it's a project worth waiting for, and I just don't want to put pressure on anyone. I mean, let's just, when it happens, it'll happen. The building, or rather the parking structure, once again, I want to reiterate, is empty. So it's not like from the city's perspective we have someone who's going to be jumping on that site anytime soon.
Well, we appreciate all of your comments, and hopefully when we stand up here before you next time, there'll be some very good news. As we said before, college people have walked the site on San Fernando Road. It offers great potential if everything can be built there and in a timely manner. The college is faced with need to have a home for, in that event, for the 3-year period, which this council kindly agreed to. But it needs to move this show on the same as each of you want to see it moved on. there's no other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seth Welder?
Seth Weber, I'm the campus director over at Glendale Career College. The only thing I'd like to add was to build on Mr. Baker's comments about the fact that we're embarrassed to be back here. Mr. Manukian brought up, he hoped that it wasn't on any fault of the city. We actually received an incredible amount of support from staff as we got prepared for that last meeting, acting in full anticipation that permits would be pulled imminently. So the city and the city staff did everything that we could have asked and expected, and I just really do want to thank you all for your support through this process.
Question? I have a question for you. My mindset for voting for this was to keep a college into the city, and that was the main reason that I voted for that arrangements. At the time that we were voting on this, there were people in here from the college side that said they would like to be on the new site, and from the Dornplatz side that says they would like to be on that site too. I do not understand the challenges that you are facing today of not wanting to have irrevocable letter of intent that basically says, yes, you're going to move there when they build the site.
Right.
And that's the part, I mean, I'm trying to understand what they're doing. I just don't understand what it is. Now, if the issue is over leasing and what the cost is and this and that I can understand for sure. But, I mean, you can negotiate that, but the main reason I voted for that is because you're going to stay. If I know in an instant that you are going to move to another city after 3 years, I will not vote for that.
Right.
I want to make that very clear. I made it clear last time. I'm making it clear again. So that's one thing I don't understand what the issue is. If it's a lease issue, just tell me it's a lease issue, it's a negotiation issue, and you don't need to say no more.
Well, the negotiations are being handled on the East Coast, so I'm not in the middle of those negotiations. My understanding is that they are, it is around business terms. It has absolutely nothing to do with our desire to be in the city of Glendale.
Okay.
This is where we want to be. We've been here since 1946, and we'd hope to be here for another 60 years.
Okay, so it's over business terms.
It's over business terms, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
And the irrevocable is the scary language just because of the performance issues we've been having to date. So that does make us nervous.
Well, that language separates boys from the men.
Okay.
Trust me. I do this, and I see LOIs all the time, which basically the paper is worth more than what's written on it. And they can walk away from it any second, any time. They mean absolutely nothing. And if you want some teeth into it, there needs to be something in there that holds you to it, or you might as well not bother spending the money for an attorney to write it.
Okay.
And and I'm in a different business now, and I'll tell you, I see a lot of them. So I can understand what they're trying to do. They want to make sure that you're going to be going there and you're going to act as a tenant there.
Right.
And your position is you want to make sure that you don't end up short of the stick with having to pay an arm and a leg because they want you there too.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Would you like us to put a time limit on this parking exception before permits are pulled? Sorry. Would you like to put a time limit on these permits before permit pulling issue?
I don't have a straight answer for you, Mr. Manukian, and the reason is I see how the issue can cut both ways. From the college's perspective, 60 days to come back and report on the progress is an excellent incentive because it does keep both us and Dornplatz at the table. I'm just afraid that it could be used as a blunt cudgel to force us into some terms that may not be in our best interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I'll move for them to report back in 60 days. If that's okay.
Second.
Wait, there's no
There's one
motion.
more speaker.
This is for information
Rodney
only.
Kahn, but he says if required. You guys want to hear, Rod?
No, this was for information only.
It's to answer your question.
Oh, sure.
Rodney?
Thank you. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are here in the city of Glendale. Mr. Manukian, to answer your question, we were discussing that as you were speaking. Instead of the recommendation in 60 days from the staff to rescind the parking exception, we would ask that in 60 days we'd be far enough along to know where we stand.
Right.
But we would prefer to be consistent, to place a 2-year time period on the original motion. That way we would be able to continue if it takes more than 60 days during these negotiations, that you do have a fixed time period that says this exception is only good for 2 years. And that's something that we could live with, and that gives us some flexibility as well.
And that would be consistent with the rest of the
That is
side of the
correct.
redevelopment area as well.
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, my understanding is that this item is for information only, so could you tell me that a motion is appropriate or inappropriate?
A couple of things, Mr. Chairman, members of the agency. One, you do not need a motion to just direct staff to bring it back within 60 days, as is outlined in the report.
Okay.
Number two, just so no one is left with any false expectations, a motion to revoke this parking exception, or essentially to have a hearing to revoke it, would require a noticed public hearing, which certainly could not be even. You couldn't even start the process today. What is recommended by staff in the motion as part of the report is that we do come back within 60 days to let you know what the progress is. And at that time, based on staff's recommendation, and as you hear from others, you determine there has not been sufficient progress, we would then set the matter revocation of their parking exception, which could include reaffirming it with new conditions, including a 2-year limit or even a lesser time, to be able to pull those permits and move forward.
And, Mr. Chair, there should be no objection to having a motion to come back in 60 days.
You honestly, you don't need it. It wasn't
You could
listed
just
on
give,
as an action item. Just give
direction.
us direction to come back in 60 days.
There's no more cards, so this public hearing is closed. Mr. Starbird, you had a comment?
No.
Mr. Lansafine? None? Okay. Mr. Najarian?
My only comment is that when we were initially wrestling with this, and we came up with the whole 3-year time period, I think we were dusting off our crystal ball and looking 3 years into the future and assuming and perhaps expecting that there's going to be a certain level of development in the downtown area that's going to need the college to vacate the 120 spaces, whatever that was, 140 spaces that we're going to be giving them the exception for. And the only concern I have is if we have a 2-year expiration on this parking variance, and then the 3 years could start at the end of that 2 years, we're talking 5 years down the road. And I'm not sure that that's a realistic assumption, that it would take 2 years to iron these problems out. But, I mean, in the most conservative outlook, there could be parking there 5 years from today, or 5 years from our initial action. So when the time comes to discuss this issue, that's something I'm going to raise, and hopefully we'll get some discussion on that.
I was waiting for him to say point of order, but he didn't do that. Okay.
Mr. Starbird has a comment.
Okay, Mr. Starbird.
Well, in follow-up to that, it seems to me that that's probably a bridge we can cross if we need to cross it. We'll have, if the direction carries, we'll have 60 days to report back. Hopefully, the conversation about how long the exception is going to last will be moot, because they'll have made progress. If it seems like they're not, then we'll include in the staff report an evaluation of those other options and the pros and cons of those.
Okay. As for myself, on 60 days, I like the staff to put this thing on the agenda and be agendas in such manner so the agency could take action on any item that they feel that is the right appropriate action to take. So I don't want so put it on the agenda so we could discuss it. If we decide we want to revoke it, we can. If we want to discuss whether 2 years is what we want to do, whether we want to reduce it to 60 days, whatever we want to do, we can talk about it, we can pass a motion under that effect and move on.
That would necessitate, Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, that would necessitate a noticed public hearing. And we can do that if that's the
And 60
majority's wishes. we could do that. That notice would have to go out, obviously, at least 10 days prior to the date of the
Well,
hearings.
if you want, and I think we should do that, because if we want to extend this thing for 2 years, we have to give a public notice.
Yeah.
If we want to, you want to stop it, we have to give public notice. So no matter what action we take, we have to give a public notice.
Any change in the conditions or a revocation requires a notice and opportunity to be heard. This is
So-
essentially a notice public hearing.
I think that's what we should do. So this way we can discuss all the stuff without worrying about violating the Brown Act issues. As I am.
Mr. Chair, if I
Let's get
can, we'll
clarification.
need to make sure that's the will of the majority.
I don't think that's necessary, but I just find this ironic that we spent a lot of money and invited 200-plus people to the city of Glendale to invest in Glendale, and we had this wonderful DVD about how easy it is to do business here and what a wonderful city we have. I'm glad the staff has responded in a positive manner to this issue, but the bottom line is let these people, let these two corporations, let them work out what they have to work out. I mean, I just don't see that we now need to, 60 days from now, how are they going to negotiate if they've got this over their head? I don't really think that 60 days from now we need to have a drop-dead date where whatever efforts they've put through are now null and void. I just, either we have a business-friendly environment or we don't. Why are we jumping into this situation? I'm not for it.
I think I just like the opportunity of the 60 days to have it such that we could give direction, either to change the terms or do whatever, that we can say it at that time. Because the school's in an awkward position, and I'm trying to fathom what's inside Dorn Platz's head at this time. The only thing that makes sense is they're trying to possibly adjust the terms of the deal in favor of Dorn Platz. I mean, no plans. We've seen nothing in planning or anywhere, right, on what they intend to do down on Dorn. So
They gave us some designs. Remember last time?
yeah, that.
They were us.
I don't think that was adaptive for the college. I think that was for more commercial retail development. The college is going to be a different thing there. Maybe they're finding the site they cannot park it and build it. I don't know. But I think 60 days is where we cut our fish, cut bait or fish, whatever that saying is, and give direction to staff what to bring us. I don't know how that dovetails with what my other colleagues said. We can't go on forever like this, and we shouldn't hold the parking exception forevermore. It's got to be some closure to it. Is that
Have staff?
Well,
you have-
just to clarify, the notice requires what, Scott?
Minimum
10
10
days?
days. Minimum 10 days.
Okay, so we can give
Maybe as
notice,
long
we
as
can
15.
make notice between now and the 60th, so you could take whatever action you want on the 60th, or at the end of the 60 days. Or if you don't, then it'll require at least a 10-day notice to then come back and take some action. That's your two alternatives.
Or you can choose to continue the matter. I mean,
You can't.
it's just that when it's in front of us, we should be able to deal with the issue if we need to deal with the issue. They may come in here and say, listen, we're almost there, we need another 20 days, we're not going to say no. But the bottom line is we need to be able to make some type of a decision so they don't think that this is open forever.
it shouldn't be an information
Right,
report.
right, exactly. And I do disagree with my colleague, Mr. Quintero, that this has been dragged on by us. The reality is, as Mr. Najarian says, we did offer them a parking exceptions. We gave them some terms. Dornplatz turned it down. The only reason we came back, to be honest with you, is because the calls I got from Mr. Baker and asking me to do this for the college, and the calls I got from the college saying that they would like to be there, and calls I got from Dornplatz saying that they are ready to start the project as soon as we issue them a permit. And our staff worked day and night, holidays, vacations, to get this thing done. It's been sitting there for over a month waiting for them to just go pay the fee, pull the permit. It's not that we're holding them out. They did construction, they did not pull permits, they did it without the permits. Now, we have made all kinds of allowances, we have jumped all kinds of hoops for them. And if Durham Plants doesn't or cannot see a gift horse in the mouth, you know what, I don't know what to tell them. I mean, how many times do we have to go out of our ways for them? Now, the rest of my colleagues have a little bit more patience, and I will go along with them. If it was me, they have already had 3 strikes. They're out as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not going to do that because of Mr. Baker and because of the college. And I hope they watch this TV, and I don't care if they don't like me. This is ridiculous.
Well, there is one factor that might play into it, and I don't know how it would. That's the fact that when Durham Platts redesigned the interiors, they eliminated the rear entry for the retailers to go on the front. There's no way for any retail establishment to come in there to get their merchandise in other than stopping on the side street or along the side of California, trucking it in, or trying to get a spot in the back. They cannot come in through the back, so the entire configuration may be in jeopardy.
Mr. Weaver, they've done that.
They've done
All
what?
that stuff's done. It's put in front of the staff. They have worked out all the drawings.
That's all been revised?
It's done.
Oh, I'm sorry, this mayor wasn't told anything. I'm sorry.
Everything is done.
I didn't know anything.
For a month, it's
But
been
staff,
done.
please let me know from now on, because I asked that question when the realtor that was trying to lease it told me that they couldn't get in from the rear anymore, and I brought that question to staff, and I've heard nothing since.
Mr. Weaver, the Durham Platts did close that loading bay
Yes.
from the back, and that does affect the retail space.
But it's all been
But
fixed?
they have redesigned the college space so that in its configuration that they would move in, those plans have been into planning, the permits are ready to pull. So they would have to reconfigure, if depending on their tenant, that loading, but it doesn't affect the college.
Okay. Next time I'd like to know that information. I don't like to be blindsided.
Okay, that's the last comments, I guess, on this issue.
I see.
Thank you, Mr. Baker,
Don't need
and may God have give you more patience.
Mr. Chair.
Still need
Still haven't
clarification on whether we're
clarified
going to be
giving
setting
notice
this matter
the
for a hearing in
60
60
meeting
days.
60 days from now.
It's clear to us.
Well, I have two.
Maybe you can describe what it is then.
Put it on as an action item.
I've heard two that indicate they would like to the matter set for hearing.
that was requested that it
I'll
come
chime
back in 60 days with something more than mere information only.
Action item to give direction. How's that?
And should it's been
That's-
pointed out that should a public hearing be required,
Yeah, and-
there'd be a 10-day.
Yeah, we would anticipate that if that's what the majority wants, then we would give a notice so that you could make any adjustment to the current granting of the exception that you deemed appropriate, including taking no action or terminating it. But that would require a 10-day notice, and we'd give that between now and then. If that's what you wish.
You okay?
Well, again, I'm hearing two different things. I don't mean to parse this. It's the difference between setting a motion, setting the matter for public hearing in 60 days, or having the matter come back as an action item to discuss and do a whole host of things short of any revocation, any change in conditions, and then direction sent.
Mr. Howard, I think
back within
the
10 or
request is for
15
all-
we're
days.
saying it in two different
The
ways.
request is for all of, to
maybe
be able
that's
to do
why
all of those things.
Can you summarize what we're probably all trying to say?
Well, I'm hoping I'm hoping I'm able
Give
to
it a
do
try.
that because in the way my mind works is there's a specific notice, an opportunity to be heard requirement, published notice to the parties that in revocation or modification of the conditions of their parking exception. That's one thing. Another is we put it on as an action item. You get to have this similar discussion you have today with more specific direction to come back with a notice public hearing. If you actually want the ability to have that hearing on that day,
Yes.
that's
That's what I
Oh, a
understand.
two-step or a
It's
one-step?
the former,
Right.
not the latter. What I hear being said is the former.
if it's the former, it's a
It's just a
two-step
notice
process.
issue. You're giving it 10 days before. That's it. What's the difference? 10 days before, 10 days after. But at least that day, we sit there, we discuss all the stuff. We don't say, oh, go back and give notice again. Just
Action
make a
or
decision.
hearing?
Well,
It's a two-step or one-step? The hearing's fine. One step, right?
hearing,
One
fine.
step.
That's the
Okay.
majority.
Let's go.
Have a hearing in
Put it on.
we'll set it for hearing in 60 days and
My misunderstanding.
have it. And as the chair indicated, it can certainly be continued.
Okay.
Thank you. What's next, please?
Next is agency member staff comments.
Mr. Lansing, you have some comments?
Yes, I do. If you will indulge me, today is a day of presentations, and I would like to I would like to show just the opening clip from our Invest in Glendale. We can get the lights down so it looks a little clear.
Geez, how many times do we get to see this?
This is the video that
This is the
is that it?
We just wanted to play.
That was just the beginning.
We just wanted to play the introduction for you.
play more, you got Starboard.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, that is just the introduction to the production that our GTV6 crew did, and I would like to take this opportunity to personally thank the staffs of Development Services and GTV6, and in particular, Mark Berry, Elena Bobolian, Dave Ahern from Development Services, and Tor Johansson, Robert Townsend, and Henry Safarian from GTV6. We have received several calls following the event. The materials that I've given you, passed out to you, a booklet, everybody in attendance got that, and we're out. We have about 100 copies left. We are producing a copy of the full film here. It's about 15 minutes. We'll be sending that and following it up to everybody that was in attendance. But everybody that has called has had nothing but positive comments, and a lot of them have commented, "Who did you use for the film? It was so well done." And I really want to extend my thanks and appreciation to Rich Wells and his staff at GTV6. I think I saw an email message from Bob McFall saying that there's absolutely no need to go outside for video production such as this. It was really a professional job. One last comment. You asked us to follow up with the people that were there to see what kind of response we got, and we are doing a couple of things. We're sending a follow-up letter now thanking them, and we will be also sending out a survey, a short survey, so that we know that it'll get done and get sent back. Make it as easy as possible. What did they like about it? Will they invest in Glendale? What types of investments are they looking at? And also, what could we do better for the future? We'll also follow up, as I said before, we'll send the DVD to everybody in attendance, and then we'll have those as a marketing piece for us. We've started talking about among the staff, refreshing this and making this an annual event so that we can get the information about what a good environment Glendale is to invest in to all of those developers, investors, bankers, underwriters, what have you.
And I too got a call already from a large development company. I'm waiting for a return call. They're very interested in coming to Glendale.
Good. Any other comments?
Did you tell them that I prefer lower-rise buildings?
We left that.
Well, you lost on that one, I'll tell you what they said.
I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the staff and also the redevelopment agency, and also, let's not forget Jim Starbert. When I went to him with this idea, he thought that was a good idea and put this thing on the agenda. I also want to thank my agency members and council colleagues to appropriate the funds that was required to put this thing together. I think overall, staff worked very diligently, so did the GTV6 people, and put together a very good program. That day, I heard nothing but positive input from the public, and I had talked to at least 2 developers or investors, real estate investors. One was talking about purchasing a whole block. Another one was talking about purchasing a half a block. And they're interested in actually coming to Glendale, investing very large sums of money. They were very excited. I did have a couple of people who had come from another city, our neighboring city, and they were very jealous. And so I have a feeling that our neighboring cities will be moving in that direction. So it's going to be probably war of the DVDs between the cities. So that may happen. Mr. Starbird.
I apologize to Mr. Yusefian for making him toot his own horn a bit, but the genesis of this was an idea that Mr. Yusefian brought back from an event that he attended in the bigger city neighboring us here. And it was easy for me to turn it over to Phil and let Phil and the staff in GTV6 run with it. There's a second aspect to this, though, and that is the sharing of it within the organization so that we make sure we're walking the walk that we talk, or walking the talk that we talk. And we've already begun to share it with executives and talk about how we make sure we're carrying through with this image that we're putting out to the private investments, that this is a place that it's a positive experience to come make your investment here. You heard very good comments by Hassan at the event, by Phil at the event, about how our departments are working together and want to create the right business climate. We need to make sure we carry through with that, and that'll be our big effort. But thank you all very much.
Mr. Quintero.
I also think the event turned out real well. I was at the L.A. event similar to this, and I do think we need to do it yearly. It's easy for people. Well, number one, obviously the staff will be following up, but just think if it's done in the spring more or less at the same time, then people begin to think, oh, wow, what's happening this spring in Glendale. So. And the Alex is a perfect venue for it.
By the way, I think that our event was better than the LA event, but let's not go there.
Mr. Chairman, one more thing. I forgot to thank the Downtown Merchants Association. They helped us host the post-event reception, so very big thank you to them, and to Milano's restaurant that catered the event for us. Food was very good.
Very good.
Was there a post-event reception?
There was
After the event.
There was
There
food.
was a lot of
and-
food, and Porto's also provided.
That's right. Porto's was there before.
desserts.
Again, there were so many people that came together for this. I forgive me if I
Should have
forgot.
hang around.
Yeah,
and
I had to
mingle
go.
more.
I saw it outside when I was leaving.
Good food.
Yeah.
That'll teach you.
I usually don't miss the receptions.
All right. We're done. So what's next, please?
So moved.
Second? Second. We're adjourned.
Okay.